لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. The month of Muharram is approaching, and inshallah next week, the same night, would be the first night of Muharram. Some of the brothers and sisters here may be here in Qom, commemorating the martyrdom of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. Some of you may be away. So for me, this is the opportunity to share with you some of the ideas about the true meaning of mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam. And perhaps if you agree, you can also share this with the people that you are going to meet, inshallah. We know that over centuries, mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam has been always practiced by the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, among Muslims and sometimes even non-Muslims. There are even non-Muslims who mourn for Imam Husayn alayhi salam, and on the day of Ashura they show their grief over this great loss. Some of them may take part in the mourning sessions or processions for Imam Husayn alayhi salam. Some of them may donate money. Some of them, when they have some needs or requests, they think that this is an opportunity that they can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. So this has been happening over centuries in different parts of the world. Now what we have is a rich culture of mourning or azadari for Imam Husayn alayhi salam, which is also very diverse and not always necessarily acceptable, although in principle and in essence it's very much supported by the Ahlul Bayt themselves and by our ulama, but sometimes because it has become so widespread and so diverse, and there is no central body to tell what type of mourning for Imam Husayn is right, what type is wrong. So it's possible that some ways of azadari that are practiced or are going to be practiced in future may not be that much acceptable. So for us, it's very important to now, before actually being in the process and the middle of azadari, to sit back and have a little reflection on the concept of mourning or azadari for Imam Husayn alayhi salam, and then we can perhaps provide others with some guidelines. Let us first see what is mourning in general, and then reflect on the mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam in particular. In every culture, you find that whenever they lose a dear person, they mourn. If they lose their parents or their children or their friends, they feel very sad. But they also mourn What is the difference between being sad and mourn for someone? It seems that to be sad is something that can be very personal, something that you can hide it. In some cultures, like Eastern cultures, they are very much expressive when it comes to their emotions. When I am sad, immediately I show it. When I am happy, I immediately show it. In some other cultures, they are very much reluctant to express their emotions. It doesn't mean that they don't have emotions, but they don't express it easily. It's very sophisticated. So sometimes maybe a person loves you but doesn't tell you anything, or maybe hates you, doesn't tell you anything. But in our culture, as soon as someone hates someone, this appears right in his face or in his words, if not in his actions and physical, movements. The same it is mourning. When we lose someone, we express this by putting on a special dress, by somehow stopping our normal pattern of life. Maybe I don't go to my office or my shop for some days. Maybe we, for example, hold a funeral session. We invite other people. We show this. We express this. And also we try not to smile or not to laugh. Not necessarily because we cannot smile or laugh, but we try to somehow show that we are sad. In some cultures, it's not like this. The Ramadan, before last Ramadan, I attended a funeral in Canada. A good friend, a Christian friend who was a professor, passed away. And it happened that I was there for the months of Ramadan. So I traveled to that city to take part in the funeral. And it was obvious that everyone, was sad, especially family members. They were very sad. But something which was a big change or big, difference that I noticed was that even his own children, when they came to speak, they made jokes. They tried to make everyone laugh. And they thought in this way they are pleasing the soul of the dead person. And if it was someone unfamiliar with that culture, would say, oh, these people didn't love that person. But it was obvious they really loved him, but the way to express their sadness is different from us. So, to be sad is something, to express it is different. To feel sad is a human, automatic or natural reaction when you lose someone. But to express it can be partly natural and partly cultural. And therefore you can engineer that. Either you engineer this in one generation, so we say, for example, from today we decide to mourn in this way, or gradually, year by year, age by age, this is engineered and it's passed on to us. But anyway, this is not necessarily natural. And this is why you see that some people do it in one way, some people do it in another way. There are people who put on black dress when they go to funeral session. And there are people who put on white dress. Some people, when they go for a funeral, they put on white dress, not black dress. But for us, it's important to put on the black dress. Or, for example, if you look back at the history, there is a beautiful story which is reported by Herodotus, the famous Greek historian. He says that in the time of Iranian king Dariush, he was informed that some people in his empire, because at that time Iran was a big empire, and Greece was part of Iran, and India was another part of Iran. So he was informed that in his own empire, there are people that they actually eat the dead body of their dead parents or relatives. And there are people who burn. So it's big, difference. So instead of burying the dead bodies, which was normal, or putting on some place like what the Zoroastrians do, on a top place, so that the birds, can come, they were either burning or eating. So he asked, this is what Herodotus say, and it is mentioned in many books about ethics also. So he asked representatives of both communities to come to his court. So he told the people who used to burn, and that was the Indians, why you burn? They said, we burn out of respect. We don't want their body to be deceased and their body to become, spoiled. We burn them by fire, and, this, keeps it safe from being spoiled, and also then we can keep the dash of the body. He said, how much should I give you so that you accept, instead of burning the body, you eat the body? They said, it's impossible. It's not a matter of money. If you give us millions, we are not going to eat our parents who are dead. Then he asked the people who used to eat, why do you eat? They said, this is a sign of respect. We eat them so that they become part of our flesh and blood, and they are preserved in us. They said, how much I give you to burn them? He said, how can I burn my father? I cannot burn my father. I must eat my father. So, some people use this example to prove ethical relativism, which is not really a good argument for that. But this shows that there is one fundamental principle and different ways of practicing. The fundamental principle is that you have to respect a dead father, a dead mother, a dead human being. You have to respect. You don't find any human being or human society would say, when someone dies, we put the dead body in a dustbin or in the rubbish. They want to show respect. So this is shared. This is common value. But then how to practice this, it depends on the culture, it depends on the worldview, it depends on the religion, on their philosophy, whether if they believe in another life, they don't believe in another life. Many, many things can shape and form their practice. So when you see there are different practices, you must not think that they necessarily have different values. Sometimes it's one value, but showed in different ways. Sometimes people want to be hospitable, but to look after your guest can be exercised in different ways. Some people, when they want to be hospitable, they bring lots of food for you, and they bring food of 5, 6 people and put in front of you, and they insist on eating all those food. And some people are relaxed about food, but still they are hospitable. They try to look after you. Or in some cultures, to be a good guest, And to show your appreciation of what your host has offered, you have to finish the food. So if you make the dish empty, it means that you really enjoyed the food. But in some other cultures, if you do like this, the host would feel embarrassed because the host would see that the food was not enough. So you should always make sure to leave some of the food there so that the host doesn't think that the food was not enough. So it's very much cultural. So it needs understanding and it needs intelligence to distinguish between what is the core value which is shared and what is the way of exercising your respect for that value or practicing that value. These are two different things. Let us go back to the issue of mourning. When you want to mourn for someone who has been lost, there is one core value, and that is to be sad, to have grief, to have sorrow, and at the same time respect and honor for that dead person, and express it. But then how to express it can be very different. It can vary from culture to culture, even from one person to another person. There are people that sometimes, for example, they prefer to read a book about the life of that person. There are people who prefer to listen to a song, for example, or an eulogy, for example, a Marsiyah, for example, about that person. There are different ways. There are people who prefer to have procession, to go to the street. There are people who prefer to sit in a Husayniyah. There are different ways. There are people who prefer to do it in the day. There are people who prefer to do it during night. There are people who prefer to do it day and night. So there are different ways of doing these things. We have to be very careful not to mix the essence and core of mourning with the forms of mourning. Especially because this is a very sensitive issue for us. This is something that we very much revere and love to mourn for Imam Husayn alayhi salam. So it has become very sensitive and emotional. As soon as you start talking about anything related to the mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam, you have to be very careful because there are people who may be emotionally attached. So for example, in the UK, there is a very well-known center in Manchester, and everyone knows there. In that center, at the time that I was there, and I don't know what is the case now, maybe not again the same, they used to keep a horse. 52 weeks, 365 days of the year, they used to keep a horse inside the Islamic center and look after this horse. So every time several people must look after this horse, feed him, everything. Why? Because this horse has an important role. When they have processions in Muharram, this horse comes to the street. And this horse is a very important part of that procession and that mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam. And then gradually it became so significant that you have to speak with respect about that horse. That horse is not an ordinary horse. And then gradually, some people say that horse comes from the same family of Zuljanah or something similar to that. So things can be built around that. Even sometimes, you hear stories that I don't want to mention in this public place, how much people respect everything related to that horse, which makes no sense. And if you want to talk about that horse, no matter whether you are alim or not alim, your respect is as much as you respect that horse. If you want to say anything about that horse which is not respectful, you lose your respect. You can be cursed. So this is a very emotional issue. And unfortunately, in many cases, people don't make distinction between the essence of mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam and different manners that they are brought up with in their village or their town or their country. They think everything is sacred. My fathers and grandfathers used to mourn for Imam Husayn in this way. You are asking me to change? How can I change this? I cannot change this. But this is not a good logic. If your fathers and grandfathers did something, it doesn't mean that it was correct. And even if it was correct at that time, it doesn't mean that it is correct today. And even if it is correct today in your own place, it cannot be necessarily correct in Manchester or in Washington. You have to be very much understanding and in control of your emotions to realize what is the essence of mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam and what is the best way of doing it. Especially we have to remember that for us, mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam is not just to satisfy ourselves. Unfortunately, this is another problem that happens. Many of us mourn for Imam Husayn just because of reward. Or just because, we want to satisfy ourselves. I have to, for example, cry. I have to do something so that I am feeling that, alhamdulillah, my Muharram is good. This is not enough. We have to mourn for Imam Husayn alayhi salam, but we have to choose a manner of mourning that can help the cause for which Imam Husayn alayhi salam was killed. Not just to satisfy myself. Maybe for me, in this Muharram, my duty is to travel and to speak about Imam Husayn's revolution with the people that they are not going to cry, but they are going to understand and to learn and respect. But I say, no, I have to be in my own town because, I want to take part in these majalis and I want to cry, I want to eat that blessed food. This is very important for me. To go away from this culture makes me very sad. I feel deprived. But it must not be a matter of personal enjoyment. Of course, everyone would prefer to stay in Qom or Najaf or Karbala and just take part in these majalis. If it is personal choice, for us it's easier not to go to any place and not to meet any new faces and any new people, just to sit at home and in your local, mosque or shrine and enjoy your Muharram. But is it what Imam Husayn expects from us? No. So we have to distinguish between the essence of mourning and the manner of doing it. So I say briefly what I think to be the essence, and of course you can have your own understanding. It's just something that I think is right and true. I think what is the essence is to be sad, to feel deep sorrow in your heart for the tragic event of Karbala and its aftermath. Because the tragedy didn't stop on the day of Ashura. It just started, if not started before, it started on the day of Ashura, but it continued. We should feel very sad. And this sadness, I have to make it very, brief. This sadness would reach its climax and its peak when you can actually cry. If you can cry it shows that your sadness has become very strong. But if someone cannot cry, shouldn't, force himself or herself to cry. Inshallah, a time would come that you would be able to cry. What we have in our hadith is that the fact that you show understanding and sadness, this is greatly rewarded. Maybe you are able to cry, alhamdulillah. Maybe you are not able to cry, at least you pretend, at least you do tabaki. That is also rewarded. Don't think that if you have not, shed any tears, there is no value. The main thing is that you feel sympathetic to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam for this tragic event. You have this union with Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam so that their suffering counts as your suffering. This is a very important point. Your suffering is not because you have lost your own family members. When something happens to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and as a result they suffer, you also suffer. This is a very important sign of unity with Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in your emotions, in your feelings. I don't have time to explain that then how you would be put in the position of sabirun and you would be greatly rewarded because you are suffering and still you have remained patient. What suffering? Suffering that has happened to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And this unity in emotions and feelings must lead, if not in 1 year, at least in 2 years, if not in 3 years, at least after many years of mourning for Imam Husayn, must lead to resemblance between your personality and the personality of those who were killed, those companions and family members of Imam Husayn alayhi salam who supported him. If for 10, 20, 30, 40 years we mourn for Imam Husayn, but we are not acting like any of companion of Imam Husayn, this mourning has not worked for us. This mourning has not been productive for us. It means that it was not true mourning. It was just something superficial. If I really mourn for Imam Husayn alayhi salam, it means that emotionally and intellectually I must get closer and closer to Imam and his companions. What is the sign of this unity? What is the sign that for you mourning has been in the right track? The sign is that you would dedicate your life to what Imam Husayn alayhi salam dedicated his life. You would be able to give your life and whatever valuable you have for the same cause that Imam Husayn alayhi salam gave his life and everything valuable that he had. This is the sign. I sometimes use this example. Please, reflect on this example. Imagine there is a very remote village. There are people who live in mountains, for example, or in a desert. They don't have access to health services. No one knows about them or no one bothers about them. And there is an epidemic disease. A disease has spread. The people are dying. A group of dedicated doctors and nurses, they say, we must do something. Not because they have asked us or they have paid us or they are going to reward us or appreciate even us. we feel responsible. There are ill people who are suffering, who are dying, and we can help them. We should go and help them. But some people tell them, the road is very dangerous. It's in the middle of a mountain or in the middle of a desert, and there are lots of dangers, human beings that may attack you, wolves and animals that may attack you. You yourself may get, affected by that illness. They say no. We have responsibility to go and help them, no matter what is going to be the cost. وَلَوْ بَلَغَ مَا بَلَغْ, we have to go and help them. They go, and on their way, they are attacked. Some people who somehow benefit from that illness there, maybe they can make more money by keeping that people ill. They attack them. And these doctors and nurses are killed. What would be your reaction when you hear the news? For sure, you feel very sad. You feel that this is a great loss. And if you know them very well, if you know them in person, you may cry. If you have understanding of them, you may cry. If they are very close to you, you will cry. But is it the end of a story? You become sad and you cry? Or you say, okay, from now on, every year at this time, we are going to cry. And let that work uncompleted. Let those ill people remain in their illness and forget what these people were going to do. You just say, I am very sad, I am crying. Or if you have real love and respect for those people, you try to continue their job. You try to please their souls by saying that I have finished your job. Or at least I did my best. Not that we forget those people who are ill and suffering. We forget the aim of those great martyrs, and we say we are just crying. So, if we really mourn for Imam Husayn alayhi salam, we have to work towards fulfillment of the aims of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. We have to work towards achieving what Imam Husayn alayhi salam was ready to give his lives to achieve. And this is what I think sometimes we don't find very clear in our way of mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam. We think that the mourning by itself is changing everything, or the ways and the manners of expressing our sorrow is enough. No, it's different. I give you another example, because this is a very important issue. I have to use examples to make it clear. I don't want to be misunderstood. Sometimes you speak to a child, and the child says, who is a doctor? For you, it may be difficult to explain to a 2 or 3 year old child who is a doctor. So what would you say? You say doctor is the one who puts on a white dress, goes to hospital, for example, has some equipment. You mention some of these things, and you say doctor is this one. So if our understanding is kept at this level, then we would think that whoever puts on a white dress and carries these equipments and is in hospital is a doctor. But this is not necessarily the definition of a doctor. Maybe a doctor is now outside hospital without any dress, even without any equipment. Or maybe someone with all these signs is in hospital, but he's a thief. He's a thief who is somehow disguising himself so that he can go and do something without being noticed. If you are not clever, if you are not intelligent enough, you think that those signs form the essence of being a doctor. It's like, for example, saying, who is an Ayatollah? If someone said, Ayatollah is the one who has, a mama, perhaps a big one, and, beard, and, dress like, abba and, abba, this kind of thing, then everyone can easily become Ayatollah. We should have hundreds of thousands of Ayatollahs. If this is the sign of an Ayatollah, to be an Ayatollah is something much different from this. Maybe there is an Ayatollah who doesn't have any of these appearances, or maybe there is an Ayatollah who has these appearances. This just overlaps. They are not identical. So who is the true mourner for Imam Husayn alayhi salam? The one who puts on black dress, the one who goes to sessions of mourning, the one who just shed tears? Not necessarily. Sometimes people do this in a movie. Sometimes a person is playing a role in a movie. Maybe you can employ someone like Anthony Quinn, who played the role of Hamza, to also play the role of a person who is mourning for Imam Husayn. So it's not a sign of really mourning. A true mourner for Imam Husayn alayhi salam is the one who feels deep in his heart the pain why the aims of Imam Husayn are not yet achieved. He feels great loss why we have lost a personality like Ali Akbar. Why we don't work hard to have our youths similar to Ali Akbar. Of course, they cannot be like him, but at least, in some aspects to be similar. And if we achieve this real sense and concept of mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam, then you can express it in different ways. And as long as Islamically you don't violate any ruling, that's fine. You can use your innovative ideas, you can use your own customs, you can be very innovative. And we welcome people to use arts and anything to come up with new ideas about how to express and how to do this mourning. That's not a problem. But first, don't get confused. Don't think that these by themselves are the most important things. And second, always be careful not to disregard any rulings of Sharia. Rulings of Sharia must be always respected, no matter whether it is for mourning or is for celebrating the birth anniversary. Whether you are sad or happy, you must always observe the rulings of Sharia, because that is our bottom line. That is something that we cannot forget. And if we truly mourn for Imam Husayn, then we can achieve many, many things in dunya and in the hereafter. That is what the time does not let us to continue. Inshallah, maybe in another time, to say what you can achieve if you truly mourn for Imam Husayn alayhi salam. It's not just great reward. You would be greatly rewarded, but much more than reward can be achieved. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make these months of Muharram, inshallah, a very blessed months of Muharram for all the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. May Allah enable us to share the beauties of teachings and lives of Ahlul Bayt with everyone who is interested in the world. May Allah, inshallah, keep those who do mourn for Imam Husayn alayhi salam away from any problem, any threats, any attacks, anything that can create troubles. May, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasten the reappearance of Imam al-Zaman ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, and include us among his true followers and helpers, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.